So today we're going to focus on basically how you can find areas where these bass are holding and feeding during the summertime in this shallow water. Because honestly, all of the spots that I fished and caught bass at today, I basically found the structure and the areas with my eyes, right? I didn't really use my fish finder for anything besides basically figuring out what the depth was, because the spots that held fish were actually kind of some of the shallower weeds and shallower trees that were kind of close to where the water was getting deeper. So it was on the bank where the water could kind of cave off where the fish could go. So we're going to kind of watch some footage of 3 techniques today. Punch in, which is kind of a staple for summer grass lakes and rivers, I guess. And then some frogging, which we all know about. And then, shoot, what was the third one? Oh, the classic swim jig. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. That's what I caught 95% of the bass on today. We'll kind of look at those in a little more in depth here, everybody. Here we go. There we go. Not bad. There we go. Beautiful. Barely smoked it. $15-incher. All right. There we go. Jeez. Holy cow. Smoked it. Please still be on there. Can't. Yep, I see him. It's a nice lettuce head. Smoked it. That's a nice one. Chunky 16. All right, let's see. Probably one of the most common baits for summertime bass anglers. You got a hollow body frog. So this frog is such a popular bait. It's a Spro frog. If you're not sure what a Spro frog is, you can look it up on Tackle Warehouse. This is actually not the standard size frog. It's about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch shorter than the original Spro bronze-eye frog. And the reason why I like that is because I get it. Largemouth do have pretty good sized mouths, but I feel like there are just as many largemouth that actually have kind of smaller mouths, but still thicker bodies. So to kind of increase my chances, I like throwing a smaller frog, maybe smaller than other guys do, whether or not that helps. Keys with frogging. Again, tons of videos about this, everybody. Don't need to get into too many details. Braided line and a rod that's got some flex, but it's still super strong. So again, 40-pound braid. This rod is a medium heavy. It flexes, but it's also beefy enough to get fish out of cover. So, yeah, the frog accounted for my first couple of shallow water weedy bass. If I wouldn't have caught those on the frog right away, I don't know if I really would have been focusing on it more as the day kind of progressed. So I'm definitely glad I threw the frog. I knew there had to be one in there. First little flipper-risky in there. Had to be. Barely hit it. Got him though. Gosh, it's so fun. I feel accomplished catching these fish. About a 14. This felt weird. Not a bad one. Getting off tail. See you, bud. Another one? Really? When you know, I guess. It's feisty. Same spot. There he is. So, as you kind of saw during the footage there, I actually did catch quite a few fish punching in some of those weed clumps, and maybe you want to call them mats. I'm not really sure what the correct word is for them, but yeah. So, as some of you hardcore punchers probably know, you don't really want to spend your whole entire day just going down an entire weed bank punching every single thing, right? I don't punch a lot, to be honest. This is probably only the second or third time I've punched in the last year or two. But something about it today just seemed right. So the main things I was focusing on were kind of like the points of weed clumps, or little weed clumps that stuck out further than others, or ones that looked like they were thicker or darker to hold more heat. Those were the ones that I tried to focus on. And I guess those ones were also in maybe 3 to 6 or 7 feet of water. I wasn't in like a foot or two of water. I was a little bit off the bank, and I'm like, hey, there's got to be some bass underneath here waiting to ambush. So a classic little punching setup is it's just a stiff rod. I mean, this is a 7.3 rod. I'm not going to get into the logistics because there's so many good options, and you guys kind of probably already understand this, but you want a pretty stout rod, and the braided line is key. This is 40-pound braid. You can go probably 30, you can go 50, whatever you want. The main thing is that bait, and I'd say within the bait, it'd be that sinker right there. That's a 3/4 ounce tungsten sinker. So tungsten is denser, it's smaller, and yeah, on the back here, I got that little Texas rig hook. This bait I have barely used, but I was honestly just trying to get rid of some plastics, and this ended up being what I was using, and it worked out great. So, if you're kind of new to punching like me, don't get super frustrated about your bait not completely puncturing through the weeds. I noticed that quite a bit today. I would literally have to throw my bait up 12, 15 feet in the air and then let it fall through the weeds, because 3/4 ounce sinkers are the largest ones I have. So in order to get through, that's what I had to do. But again, this was a technique that seemed to work today, and it definitely put some fish in the boat. Yes, sir. Yep, nice walleye. I was gonna say. It's a decent one. Get out of there. Yep. It's a decent one. Got it. Chunker? Crawdad whiskers. All right, as you saw, the swim jig fish. The swim jig fish were actually within the last hour, hour and a half of my day. I kind of went to a stretch that I've had success with in the springtime. So the lake I currently went to, I haven't been there in 2 months probably, and the water temperature is 15 or 20 degrees warmer since the last time I was there. So I fished a swim jig before on other lakes and on the Mississippi River. I like using it. I have a good amount of confidence with it, especially in the weeds. So a lot of guys will tell you, hey, you want a heavy swim jig to kind of tickle off of the grass and kind of pull it out and stuff, and that's when you get bites. While that may be true, a big thing that I like to do is do a pretty light swim jig and kind of keep it suspended in the water column, thinking maybe that's where the bait fish and bluegill are, and reel it pretty darn slow. So we got a little 1/4 ounce swim jig right here with a little swimmin' yum dinger on the back. The bait's not super duper important. I mean, lots of jigs and paddle tails will work, but I'd say some of the keys would be number 1, braid so you can cut through the weeds when you get one hooked. Number 2, a light swim jig. This is only a 1/4 ounce. It's definitely my favorite size. And I mean, number 3, this is a pretty bendy rod. It's a 7'3", but it's got a really nice, almost like a crankbait tip to it. So that's kind of what I like for a swim jig. Yeah, it ended up working pretty well today, as you saw. The bass were kind of in some scattered, not as thick grass, and then in some of those shallower trees too, where I didn't want to flip to it all or throw a frog. Just kind of wanted to change it up. So I'm glad I threw that swim jig. Definitely put some fish in the boat at the end of the day when I was about to pack up. So definitely glad I tried that. It's a great bait to use anytime you have some weeds. Whew. So I know this is a bunch more talking than I typically do, but you may be wondering, hey, I got 3 baits. I got the punch in, I got the swim jig, I got the frog. When should I use each one? So I feel like the punching setup works best if you have thick grass, maybe a couple inches on the surface. I'd say thick grass overall, right? Not saying a frog won't work on that, but I feel like sometimes if the canopy over the bass's heads are too thick, they might not be able to hear it or see it or punch through to eat your frog successfully. So I feel like a punching rig works when the grass is thicker and you want to get right up in there and surprise them, right? I say the frog is always a good choice. I like that more in like the slimy weeds. Something about those slimy weeds, man, that's just a great combination for a frog bait. So I'd say slimy weeds, maybe even more sparse weeds. I'd say throw the frog anywhere you maybe want to do your punch rig, right? If it's not super weedy, throw that frog. You'll probably get bit. The swim jig, finally, the swim jig, you need to have less weeds than both of the previously two, right? I like to have some lanes in the grass that I can cast through with the swim jig and let it sink a little bit and kind of just reel it through there really slow. If the weeds are too thick, I personally don't like throwing a swim jig. I don't have much confidence. I'm sure there are plenty of guys that do have confidence and throw it then, but I want to have some room, just some weeds every once in a while for my swim jig personally, or maybe have the weeds like 2 feet under the surface, not all the way up to the top. So that would be when I would decide between the three baits, everybody. Again, it's going to come down to personal preference partially. Just try a couple things out and spend a good amount of time experimenting with all three, and hopefully they'll work for you in the end.